Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Ray Lutzky. I am Vice President for Strategic Partnerships at Element 451 and also host of Mastering the Next on the Enrollify Network. I'm here today to talk to you about the new traditional students. The definition of a traditional student has been changing quite a bit over the last several years. And in this presentation, we'll talk about the impact of artificial intelligence on that shift, as well as some of the key indicators that are responsible for this change. Today's students, the new traditional students, are online, working, and skills focused. So what is a traditional student for your college or university? I'm sure you have one in mind. I'm sure that that individual is someone that your campus has been very familiar with for a long time. However, you may find that that traditional student that you've had on campus for so long or online is going to be changing. And artificial intelligence is playing a key role in that change. A number of other factors, including demographic shifts, employment, also contribute. But you'll see how artificial intelligence is woven into all of the changes that are leading to this idea of a new traditional student. When I speak with administrators and faculty across the United States on my podcast, I am not surprised to discover that most of them acknowledge that there is no such thing as a traditional student anymore. And what I recommend is that everyone focus on what I call the new traditional students. So that student that you have in mind, your traditional student from your campus, that student is likely post-secondary. Likely that student is between the ages of 18 and 24, the typical college-going age of a student. Someone entering as a freshman or a first-year, first-time student. They are likely full-time. That's not just because they're committed to pursuing a degree, but because their financial aid eligibility likely depends on their enrollment being full-time. They also likely don't have a full-time job. They're there fully committed to their education. They're there maybe living on campus, taking several courses, and maybe having an on-campus job or a part-time job, but that's secondary to their work for their degree. They also likely don't have any dependents. While many schools offer married student housing and opportunities for spouses of students to be engaged with their communities, the traditional old student was really focused on an individual and not an individual with responsibilities beyond themselves. No family responsibilities, no dependents. And as I mentioned, these traditional students were likely on campus. Universities and colleges, maybe yours included, have spent decades building capacity for housing and residential life on campus as a way to enrich the experience of degree-seeking students. And this is something that many schools have put up as a hallmark, as something they're distinctly proud of and as a differentiator against their competitors. But where are we today? If we're thinking about a new traditional student, these students are skills-focused. What do I mean by that? These students are looking for specific, appreciable skills that will help them improve their employment prospects or pursue other activities that they find very important. It's also likely that the new traditional student will be any age. Well, certainly 18 to 24-year-olds will continue to go to colleges and universities. More and more adult learners will be attracted to colleges and universities, particularly for non-degree credentials, and I'll come back to that. These students are also likely part-time, and that's for several reasons. The first reason is that they have other responsibilities, which I'll talk about in a moment. The second reason is they're not as reliant on financial aid eligibility because in some cases they're taking credentials at a much lower cost, or they have the means to pay for these credentials out of pocket. They are likely working. There are many working professionals of all ages who pursue education. Some schools have focused on working professionals by offering evening programs or part-time programs. While these have done the job for the most part, this shift continues to happen, and we will see that the working responsibilities of learners will play a key role in their decision to enroll. Many of these learners also have family responsibilities, and it's interesting to note that for some of the individuals who are degree completion learners, that is to say adults who have some college but no degree and are looking to complete their degree or have never had the chance to get a degree, in some cases they've been inspired by the traditional students, that is to say their kids who have gone on to pursue a college education have inspired them as adults to go back and pursue a degree, to do that as a dream, to do that for their career, or to do that to show their family how important education is to them. Also, and this is no surprise, the new traditional student is online. Online learning has exploded since the pandemic, but this is an acceleration of a trend that already existed long before the pandemic. Online education was a growth area, even as folks questioned the quality of that education, going all the way back to the 1980s. In many cases, the education being offered was very high quality, but for some reason, individuals were dubious because of the distance education formats, for example, satellite video or VHS tapes. Today, with synchronous online learning and even high quality asynchronous online learning, students have the flexibility to work, have family responsibilities, and gain those appreciable skills on their own time, and using technology that's readily available and familiar to them. Instructors have the ability to interact with students much more fluidly using video and audio, and also through better learning management systems. So the new traditional students really are a result of many technological and social changes. Why this change? There are many factors, and I just mentioned a few, but I'd like to double click on it a bit. Why this has happened, why we see this shift from the traditional student to this new traditional student. First, I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, are familiar with the enrollment cliff. This is a notion that there's going to be a decline in the number of traditional college-going students, and there are many factors for that I'll explore in a moment. The second, also something that you're acutely aware of, is the debate around the return on investment for a college degree based on the cost of attendance. Not only are we talking about tuition, but going back to my point earlier, that tremendous residential life complex that has been invested in for years by an institution costs money, and that money is passed along to the students, where sometimes they are paying what is comparable to an apartment off campus for a living on campus, even with a roommate, and for meal plans that are administered now usually by third parties. Online education growth and cost is another factor. Online education has exploded, as I mentioned. I'm going to show you a few data points that will acknowledge that, and also demonstrate that the cost of attendance for these programs can be demonstrably lower. That is to say, there is no infrastructure. There is no athletics for some of these online schools. There is no residential life for some of these schools. And they pay their instructors based on their teaching and not necessarily on research or any of the other areas that traditional institutions may focus their faculty's time and efforts on. I'd also like to argue that there has been a growth in tuition remission programs. Now, this is nothing new. Institutions have partnered with employers for decades to help their employees pursue education and have those companies, those organizations pay the bill for those learners. This has become even more prominent in the last 10 years as companies have looked for ways to hire, attract, retain, and reward talent. Additionally, with the speed of change in industry, some companies are looking to upskill and reskill their learners so that they don't have to do layoffs. In fact, they can take folks from one level of a company and move them to another level of a company by making sure they acquire certain appreciable skills, and they're willing to pay for that because it is cheaper for them to pay for that education and keep that employee there than to go about hiring more employees or to do layoffs. And finally, the skills economy. Getting back to the point of this presentation in artificial intelligence, the growth of artificial intelligence over the last several years with the advent of generative AI is undeniable. And the skills economy speaks to that. Employers are willing to pay much more for jobs that involve artificial intelligence than not. While AI is only one example, it represents a shift in the thinking of employers and of the value of education in the United States and around the world. So the skills economy is a big factor, in addition to that debate about the ROI, contributing to a lack of confidence in the return on investment for a college degree. Let's talk about that enrollment cliff for a second. A decline in the U.S. birth rate combined with a softening of the international student market are the primary contributors here. College enrollment dropped almost 3 million students between 2015 and 2021. There has been a decline in birth rates starting in 2007. That birth rate continued to decline during the pandemic. And many institutions, yours included likely, have been preparing for this enrollment cliff, which means fewer of those traditional college-age students, those 18 to 24-year-olds, coming out of secondary schools and looking for full-time on-campus education. Combined with that, international students make up a significant portion of the economic impact of U.S. higher education. And many countries make up the bulk of that sending. It's not an even distribution. And if you have international students, you're aware, China and India and other parts of Asia occupy a significant percentage of the international student population, particularly in the STEM fields. We have seen since 2022 a 10% drop in students from the People's Republic of China. This should be concerning. This is driven by a number of factors, including an uptick in capacity in the People's Republic of China, the construction of new institutions, the high quality of Chinese institutions, American institutions building campuses all over China. But additionally, the environment in the United States has changed significantly over the last 10 years, and many international students consider other options, including the United Kingdom, Australia, and other locations for education abroad. The ROI debate is prescient, and I'm sure you've had this conversation if you work in admissions with many parents who look at the cost of attendance at your institution and question, is it worth it? Is it worth it to send my son, my daughter, my student to your institution and pay this cost of attendance so that they are able to achieve their degree? And according to Forbes, the college degree does still offer great value. And in fact, the highest returns on investment, no surprise, do come from the STEM fields, engineering, science, mathematics, etc. This is because of the high placement rates and high starting salaries for these roles. I would even argue that liberal arts education has a strong return on investment, although that return on investment is spread out further over time and not necessarily reflected in the placement rates and the initial starting salaries. However, when looking at the majority of institutions in the United States who have prided themselves for decades on being strong liberal arts institutions, it's no surprise that we are seeing college closures all over the United States on a monthly basis now, and that's a trend that's been going on for several years. Unfortunately, relying on traditional students to study in the liberal arts is a losing proposition for some institutions, particularly when technology like artificial intelligence is not integrated into that liberal arts curriculum. So this is a challenge, not just the enrollment cliff, but questioning the very value of the degrees being offered by institutions. Third, the growth of online. Now, many of you have likely taken an online course or at least worked with students who have been in an online course, and you'll note that the quality, the pedagogy, the delivery of these courses has improved significantly. There was a time where asynchronous online courses were viewed with askance and looked at as sort of a cheat of getting through. Now, when you look at certain institutions, large institutions, like Arizona State University that enrolls hundreds of thousands of online learners in high quality master's and undergraduate programs, it's clear that this is a growing trend among nonprofit and for-profit institutions. In 2022, 10 million students took classes online. Slightly less than half took all their classes online. This is driven by flexibility, lower cost of attendance, learning models that emphasize comprehension, and an ability to work in a skills-focused way. Many online credentials are focused specifically on skills, whether they are short-form credentials or master's degrees. They're designed for working professionals in many cases, or for individuals who are seeking entry to a career field. So the lower tuition, the flexibility, the high-quality pedagogy and delivery are making these online learning options far more attractive than they've ever been. And when you consider that enrollment cliff, the decline in the number of traditional college-bound students, that decision by many to not go to college because of the questions about ROI, it makes a lot of sense why an online program would be a better fit for learners. And these tuition remission programs are growing as well. Employers, as I said, are looking for ways to upskill or reskill, reward, retain, and hire employees. Artificial intelligence is leading the pack here when you consider that there are large companies now looking to upskill vast numbers of their employees to understand artificial intelligence and its application. This is not only something that individual companies are pursuing, Amazon, FedEx, Home Depot, Apple, Uber, many, many others, but there are actually companies out there that are connecting institutions directly with these universities or with employers to provide that upskilling and reskilling in a bespoke and customized way. Companies like Guild and InStride that specifically build these kinds of tuition remission programs for companies will go out and find the most relevant education, and that is the education that is privileged for those tuition remission dollars. So this is a growing trend even today, that the cost of education is being borne by employers working with these new traditional students, these working adult learners who are upskilling and reskilling to be part of this skills economy. The skills economy is, I think, the most important factor when we consider why the new traditional student is here. Outcomes are the most important. Being well-rounded is not the focus. This speaks again to the decline in the view of traditional liberal arts education. Traditional liberal arts education prided itself on making individuals well-rounded while giving them some appreciable skills. Today, the focus on outcomes and return on investment for these credentials has eclipsed that need to be well-rounded. And the World Economic Forum has indicated that this is a transformational shift for businesses, and they need to be thinking about the individual skill sets that they're giving their employees, the skills that they need, that they might need in the future, and how those can be acquired. And higher education is positioned in a perfect way to provide value to the economy by upskilling and reskilling workers, whether they're going through tuition remission or not, to help them adapt to changes like artificial intelligence, which represents a seismic shift in the way individuals across industries are going to be doing their work. So the result of all of these key indicators, these changes, is that the traditional student supply is dwindling. There are fewer of these 18 to 24-year-olds who want to live on campus and take degrees full-time. There are more and more adults looking for opportunities to upskill, reskill, even young working professionals who want a credential that demonstrates the value of their education, but they don't necessarily want to take a full degree, and they certainly don't want to take the time to do that on campus. They'd rather do that online on their own time. So the new traditional student is three things. The new traditional student is working, the new traditional student is online, and the new traditional student is skills focused. That working individual is likely doing things either in a flexible hybrid format or at home or full-time in an office. So they need to be able to fit everything they're doing into their day. Now, if that means taking time out of their day to go to a physical location, it's possible, especially if they have that flexibility. But for many who have been called back to the office, and we see that more and more where employers are demanding that the work from home policies end, this is going to accelerate that trend of working professionals looking for flexibility. So where are they going? They're going to online education. And as I said, online education taking the form of both synchronous and asynchronous courses. Consider for a moment that even an online course in a synchronous format doesn't necessarily offer the flexibility that a working professional really needs. For example, if I'm a working professional on the West Coast and I'd really like to take a degree from an East Coast institution, but that East Coast institution requires synchronous meetings on a weekly basis on East Coast time, that's not going to work for me, and it's going to limit my options when it comes to where I'll pursue my education. Versus an asynchronous education, which allows the learner to pursue education in their own time, maybe with some optional synchronous components, an opportunity to interact with a faculty member or fellow students in a synchronous format. That being said, that asynchronous format provides maximum flexibility for these new traditional learners, these working professionals who are looking for skills to help them advance in their careers. And that brings me to the skills focus of these learners, and clearly artificial intelligence is top of mind. While many other areas of skills development are still important, for example, data analytics and the growth in other high-tech areas, artificial intelligence cuts across industries and has become ubiquitous in terms of the skills focus of these learners. So the new traditional learners are working online and skills focused. Let's double click on these. That online learner is looking for access to education and tools. And AI-powered platforms are going to provide folks with the ability to access personalized and high-quality education. And the infrastructure has been built by many institutions that have dived into an online learning format. There are mega institutions out there, both for-profit and nonprofit. Arizona State University, Western Governors University, CSU Global. There are many others that you could probably think of. Southern New Hampshire University, the University of Maryland University College. You've probably seen commercials for some of the other ones. These mega institutions are taking huge market share away from traditional institutions in terms of the education of local folks, whether they're employed or not. And this is because they have developed highly sophisticated online delivery and very high quality pedagogy that goes into that delivery. Beyond that, with the incorporation of artificial intelligence, it's only going to accelerate the ability for these institutions to provide high quality personalized education to these learners and accelerate the trend of the new traditional student being online looking for access to education and tools. And they are working. There is an incredible statistic that some of you may be familiar with, that there are almost 40 million Americans out there who began a college degree and never finished it. In some cases, they attended multiple institutions. This is what's known by many institutions as the adult completion market. That is to say, adult learners who are looking to finish a bachelor's degree. And this is definitely a part of the equation here for the new traditional student. Online learning provides the flexibility for these professionals to get what they came for, to finish that degree, even if it's years later, to transfer in credits from the institutions they attended, and also to get credit for prior learning and for experiential learning. However, not all of these learners are focused on degrees. Again, with an AI-powered on-demand learning platform, working professionals can access highly personalized, skills-focused education and potentially do that with the blessing and tuition funding of their employer, particularly if that's done in an asynchronous way that doesn't interrupt their workday, or even in a synchronous way that fits directly into their workday. The new traditional student is balancing their educational pursuits, whether it's micro-credentials or degrees, with their work life. And that is an important contributing factor to the third piece, which is that the new traditional student is skills-focused. This is a shift away from degree programs to short-form credentials. Some institutions have developed short-form credentials that stack into a full degree, whether that's a bachelor's or a master's degree. And that's very attractive to some learners. However, many learners don't want to spend the time doing a full degree, even if it's stackable. And they're focused only on those bite-sized pieces, those skills-focused short-form credentials to help them advance their skills in their careers. According to Lightcast, which is one of the leaders in employability data around higher education, Americans are consistently expressing interest in non-degree and skills training options. You can understand why, thinking about those 5 characteristics we started the presentation with, the idea that the ROI of a college degree is in question, and employability and skills are really top of mind. These short-form skills-based credentials have really become commonplace. And if you look, you can consider all the way from a vocational school doing things like an HVAC certification, or a community college offering short-form credentials to community members in areas of interest, and even up to elite institutions and the Ivy League, looking at experiments that are highly successful. Things like Cornell, which offers a variety of short-form non-credit credentials, and even Harvard Business School now has Harvard Business School Online, which offers certificates that do contribute eventually to an MBA. However, they are not designed to do that. They're designed to upskill, reskill, and help individuals working to acquire certain skills from Harvard faculty in an asynchronous format. And going back to the topic of AI, which weaves through everything we're talking about here today, artificial intelligence is a premium among employers. Employers are willing to spend more for a job that requires artificial intelligence skills today than others. And these non-traditional students, the new traditional students, are highly aware of this, and in fact are focused on acquiring these AI skills. That doesn't mean they're doing a degree. It likely means they're doing a short-form credential, some sort of certificate program, or even just a course online, likely in an asynchronous format, that is helping them acquire these skills so that they can be viewed by their employers more favorably, and or get their next job with greater ease and greater profitability because they've acquired these skills. So the new traditional student is highly skills focused, and that is why in some cases those working professionals with some college but no degree are not going to finish their degree. They are just going to acquire new skills to help them reskill themselves and upskill themselves for the knowledge economy that we're in today. So some key takeaways here. What would I recommend to you and your institution to adapt for the new traditional student? How will you better serve students in the future? Well, first, you should be shifting your outreach to working with older professionals, working with adults, while certainly understanding that the 18 to 24-year-old full-time on-campus first-time student will still exist. There's going to be a growing demand among working adults and professionals for education. Second, focusing on in-demand skills and non-credit credentials. This is a challenge for some institutions that are very focused on degrees. It is also a challenge for institutions where there is a field of dreams mentality about building these credentials, where a faculty member with a specific area of interest says, if we build this credential, students will come. It doesn't work that way. Look at data sources like Lightcast and other places where in-demand skills are demonstrably shown in the data, and use that to direct the development of non-degree credentials and short-form credentials. Definitely expanding online learning access is critical, and the affordability of that is important. While many institutions do not offer different tuition rates for online and on-campus, I encourage institutions to consider even a spin-off of their existing institution to offer online asynchronous education at a different price point. Again, keeping that flexibility in mind and understanding, while it may be challenging for some members of an institution's community to recognize, the pedagogy and the quality of online education, even in an asynchronous format, is very high, and it's demonstrated by the credibility and growth of mega institutions. As I mentioned before, for example, Arizona State University is a good case study there. Partnering with regional and national employers. This is something that every institution can do. And in fact, your institution is probably doing a bit of it already. But actively going out and speaking with organizations, visiting local hospitals, visiting local schools, visiting businesses, and I'm not talking about massive businesses, small businesses as well, and providing opportunities for their employees to gain access to the university's education and resources, and also opportunities for there to be a split cost with that employer, even if it's not full tuition remission. And you may also yet consider a partnership with a company that goes out there and helps find companies to partner with you on education for their employees and offer tuition remission. And I mentioned a few earlier. Most importantly is to think about artificial intelligence. And that's not just thinking about artificial intelligence in terms of the education that your institution is offering and how that is integrated into both non-degree and degrees at your institution, but also in the delivery of student services, in the engagement of your students. It's critical to understand that the use of artificial intelligence can create a personalization. And these new traditional learners are looking for a highly personalized experience that speaks to their goals, their needs, the skills they're looking to acquire, and they want to feel they're getting a high return on investment. So artificial intelligence can augment the existing structures at your institution to provide a highly engaging and personalized experience for your learners. The new traditional student is here, and they want employable skills. They want to understand artificial intelligence. They want to be working and be able to have a flexible delivery of their education. They want to experience the quality of your academic institution, and they'll be very proud to acquire learning from your faculty. But you need to be ready. Is your institution ready? I want to thank you for your time, and I appreciate your attention. If you'd like to learn more about trends coming up with AI, technology, and higher education, do listen to my podcast, Mastering the Next from the Enrollify Network. Comes out weekly, available wherever you get your podcasts. And again, best wishes to you, and thanks for attending the AI Engage Summit. Take care.